Hello, my constant reader friends, and welcome back to Tad Reads Books and Stuff. If you're new to the channel, hi, welcome, thank you for coming. If you see anything you like in this video, please hit the like. If you can, please subscribe to the channel, that would be great. And as everyone knows that is returning, I love comments, so please send me some comments. Hey, let's do some bookkeeping real quick. First off, I did finish Danse Macabre. I listened to it. We will be discussing this next week when I do my monthly wrap-up. So I finished that. I, of course, finished the one-shot, The Sorcerer, in my Dark Tower comic series that I'm reading. This is The Fall of Gilead, and there's one more after this. So we will be finishing this, the first series of this, this coming week. So I'll be able to discuss the whole series again next week when I do my monthly wrap-up. I am not too far into Gwendy's final task yet. This is the last one in the trilogy. But the good thing is I have next week off. I decided to take vacation. It's been a while. And I'm gonna have no problems getting through this and everything that I want to get done. Of course, I'll probably have a lot of work around the house that I have to do, but we'll get that taken care of. So next week I can do my full month wrap up and give my TBR for next month. All right. So what are we doing today? We're going to be doing my top 10 most favorite Stephen King novels. Now, of course, these are my top 10, which is awesome because everybody has different opinions. I love the different opinions. I did my bottom 5 last week and I got a lot of feedback from that, mostly for Under the Dome. My sister texted me, "What the hell are you doing putting Under the Dome down there? It's one of my favorite novels. How can you even mention the words Dolores Claiborne? It's one of my favorite books." Okay, so it's mine. I had another comments on, telling me that I was mistaken. But my girlfriend agreed with me. So that's good. Maybe I have a good, good choices there. But I love the feedback. Thank you very much. So hopefully we'll get the same thing in my top 10. Because I know probably my first one is going to be controversial. So what are the rules for my top 10? They just have to be novels. I'm not going to be doing short stories or even short story compilations or comics or anything like that. It's just going to be novels. And of course, it can be Richard Bachman or Stephen King. It doesn't matter. It can be any of those. But, all right, so let's get started. Number 10, I took a bunch of notes, which usually I don't do. Usually I ramble. That's why my videos are so long. But I just love talking about books, right? So let's start with number 10. Number 10. Yeah, Insomnia. A lot of people put this on their bottom lists. I know, I understand. They think it's very rambling, very slow in parts. I love this book. Let me give you the details. Insomnia, 787 pages, was published in September of 1994, and on Goodreads it has a 3.83 rating, which is not horrible, not bad, almost 4, which is great. You're going to see the top 5, like 10 through 6 of my books are mostly going to be in the higher 3 ratings on Goodreads. There is one that's higher. And then in my 5 through 1, you're going to see they're all 4 point something except for 1. So we'll talk about that a little bit. But anyways, Insomnia. Why do I love it? Jeez. Maybe, again, sometimes I think it's just, when we read these, what are we going through in our lives? This book I actually listened to on cassettes. I can't remember. It was a box of cassettes, man. and I listened to them in my car while I was working or driving. I often have jobs where I drive a lot, but so I listened to it on cassettes, and I loved it. So what happens in this book? Just real quick, Ralph Roberts, he can't sleep. His wife died. He can't sleep. He goes for long walks. He starts seeing some really cool things like colored strings and balloons or something above these people's heads. The one thing I really like about this book, it is a Derry, Maine book, and it does inform a lot of the multiverse. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in this book that is carried on or has been seen before in Stephen King's multiverse, which is awesome. It also has this guy, so the antagonist is this guy named Edward Depno, and he's one of my favorites. I reading this book really reminds me of Mr. Mercedes and the character Brady in that one, you know, the main antagonist in that one. Very similar, I think, when I read Mr. Mercedes, it reminded me a lot about Insomnia. But I really love this book just because of the multiverse things and everything in it. Is it a little slow sometimes, but not bad. The character, you know, Stephen King does great characters. Anyways, let's move on. That's number 10. I love Insomnia. If y'all haven't read it, give it a chance. Don't listen to everybody who says it's horrible. It's not. It's good. All right. Next, number 9. The Drawing of the Three. Yes, okay. Of course, this is the second book in Dark Tower series. I'm not doing series. The Dark Tower series may appear in another video when I go over series, but these are just individual books. This is my favorite book in the Dark Tower series. The first book, The Gunslinger, I think was great. Sets up the world and everything. But The Gunslinger, you know, was published in 1982. This wasn't published until 1987. So you had 5 years in between there, which a lot of people complained about the time between the books in this series. But that's fine. But this one, so let me give you the numbers. This version has 399 pages. The Goodreads for this was 4.22. So this is the second highest ranked book in my top 10, my whole top 10. This is the second highest rated one. I love this book. This is my favorite, like I said, in the Dark Tower series. Of course, this is when you really start getting into it. The Gunslinger, again, was great. It was setting up the world and everything and getting to know Roland. And you meet Jake. But this is where he starts his new quartet. This is where he starts gathering people for his new push towards the Dark Tower. You meet Eddie Dean. You meet Odetta Holmes. You meet Oy. I love the scene on the beach with the lobstrosities and the doors, and this gets you into the story. I know a lot of people love Wolves of the Kala. I liked it, but this is my favorite one. Song for Susanna is probably my weakest one. I really didn't like Song for Susanna. I thought that was really bloated and long-winded, but could have been shorter. Anyways, that's number 9. Keep moving, Tad. Number 8, Revival. If y'all haven't read Revival, what are you doing? You gotta read Revival. This is great. For me, it's great because of the subject matter. Let me give you the numbers. 403 pages in this volume. Goodreads 3.79, and it was published in November of 2014. What's in this book? Everything. There's religion, politics, of course, of Stephen King, coming of age, Stephen King, one of his greatest things, rock and roll music, great, and I think one of Stephen King's most purely Lovecraftian novel. He talks about in Danse Macabre how he, you know, Lovecraft was a big influence on him. I love H.P. Lovecraft. I love the mythos and all the books and authors that write in that universe. This is purely a mythos Lovecraftian novel if I've ever seen one. And it is awesome. The speed, it just keeps going, keeps going, keeps going. Again, this one only has 403 pages. Small book for Stephen King. But one of his more recent ones, 2014. And I loved it. You got to read it if you haven't read it. All right, what's next? Number 7. Number 7. Duma Key. Again, another great book. I actually like this cover. Look at the cover on this one. I like the cover on this one. So this is a period when he was writing. Again, I keep getting. See, I start talking. Pages 609 in this volume. Goodreads 3.95, almost 4 there, and published in January 2008. So during this time period, I wasn't reading a lot. I was still collecting. I just wasn't reading a lot. So this was put on the back burner for some time. I just read it recently, this past year. And man, this is a good book. I freaking love this book. Let's talk about it a little bit. So where do I start? So Edgar Fremantle is, the main protagonist in the book. And he's doing well in his life. He's got this construction company. It's doing great. It's in Minnesota. He gets in a horrible accident on a job site, and it like crushes his skull. It messes with his head, everything. So his recovery from that is traumatic. He kind of loses himself and becomes rude and mean to his wife. They get a divorce. He has to do something with his life. He quits his job, leaves the job, moves down to Duma Key in Florida. And he starts drawing and painting. And he meets this guy, Jerome Wireman, who is living on the island as a caretaker for this very older, exotic, longtime resident, Elizabeth Eastlake. She has some stories and is very important on this island. Then, of course, some crazy things start happening with his painting. He starts seeing futures through the painting. He has to figure out what's going on with this old lady, Miss Eastlake, and the island. And it's awesome. You got to read it. Duma Key. One of my favorite reads from last year. All right, where are we at? We're at number 6. Number 6. Oh, Stephen King, Desperation. I loved this book. All right, so let's get it out of the way. Pages, 690 pages in this volume, 3.75 on Goodreads right now, and it was published in September of 1996. I love this this cover. This cover is cool. I don't know what it is. Again, was it the time I was reading this? I don't know, but it really, really grabbed me. I really loved it. What did I love about it? There was this constant buildup, this like nervous buildup. And like when you're reading something and you're even kind of, you're worried what's going to happen next, what's going to happen next. So that means that the plot was good. It was continuing through the book. There wasn't I didn't think any dry spells. I think it went great. And this book truly, for me, was very atmospheric. The atmosphere was great. The elements of horror and fear I felt in this book was higher than many that I've read in Stephen King in a long time. So I really appreciated that. It was very visual. I could see everything. I love that. If I dream about a book, I really like, I know that's going to be one of my favorite books. I did have dreams about this book. I really liked it. Even the movie, or what was it, made for TV? I can't remember now. Was good. If you haven't read Desperation, read Desperation. Then, of course, there's the follow-up, The Regulators. If you remember, it was an honorable mention on one of my least favorite Stephen King books, That book, I'm not going to suggest reading, but Desperation, definitely read this book. It's awesome. I really loved it. All right, what's next? We're now at my top 5 of all time favorite Stephen King novels that I've read. So, let's make some room here. Move those out of the way. So these ones, I'm still trying to go through these, quite fast for me anyways. So some of these are so obvious, I really am not going to have a lot to say. I'm going to start off. All right, so number 5. Salem's Lot. I love I love this book so much. So this book, this version has 439 pages. On Goodreads, it's 4.04. I think it should be higher. It was published in October 1975. So everyone knows about Salem's Lot, of course. It's Stephen King, one of Stephen King's vampire novels, and very big in the multiverse that he's established. So what it is, this Kurt Barlow purchases this Marston house. It's an old, Victorian ancient house. I think the house is really one of the main characters. I really like that. I also liked the part that he's a Nosferatu type vampire, which I freaking loved. Oh, I'm tired of these beautiful looking, sexy vampires. This dude is scary as hell, and he's freaking awesome. The made-for-TV show I thought was great. It's a little corny, but I thought it was great. I mean, when I can't think of his name now, but when his best friend is hovering outside the kid's window and he's scratching on he's a vampire and he's scratching on the window, scary as hell. Going down into the basement. David Soul's in it. Come on, David Soul's in it. But anyways, let me tell you a story. I know I'm trying to be quick, but let me tell you my story about Salem's Lot. So my mother was a huge Stephen King fan, and I used to love to sit and just stare at her bookshelves and see all the books that she had. And I was staring at this one, staring at this one, staring at this one. So I sneak it off her bookshelf. Now I'm 10, 11 years old. And I sneak this off her bookshelf. I don't think I'm supposed to be reading it. Maybe it's too adult. I don't know. But I'm even at this age, I'm a reader. So I sneak it up to my bedroom, and at night, I'm got the covers over my head. I'm reading this book with a flashlight, and so it's scaring the shit out of me. And I don't know what happens, but I set it down on the floor by my bed. And in the middle of the night, I got sick, and I roll over and I puke all over the book, her book. So now, of course, I got to fess up because I'm trying to clean it up. It's not cleaning up. I've got to show it to her. She was great about it because I think, underneath, she was just, as a parent, she was kind of a proud parent, like, oh, my son's, getting into reading too. But that's my story about the Salem's Lot when I read this. Originally, back in like 1976. So, but I love this book. If you haven't read it, of course, you have to read this. This is one of his all-time best books. All right, we're going on to number 4. Number 4. And you might say that this shouldn't be in my top 5. But for me, it is. And that's a Richard Bachman book, Thinner. I loved Thinner. Why did I love Thinner? Again, similar to some of my other books. I think it was just the time that I read it. So this novel here has 309 pages. On Goodreads, it's a 3.75. So in my top 5, this is the only one that isn't 4, or higher, rating on Goodreads. It was published November of 1984. All right, so I read this novel in 1980, probably 85, let me see, 83, 84, probably 86. I don't read this till 1986, but I read it in Turkey. So I went in the Air Force out of high school. I was originally stationed in Minot, North Dakota, and then I got sent over to Incirlik, Turkey. I read this book in Incirlik, Turkey. At one point, I had to do I was the daycare person, meaning that I just had to sit. I didn't have to go to work that day, but I had to sit in the dorm. At the time I was living in the dorm, my wife was still here in Florida. She hadn't moved over to Turkey yet. I was living in the dorm. I had to do the daycare. So I started reading this book while I was doing it, sitting in the dorm, answering phones, things like that. And I couldn't stop. This is a page turner. Just page after page after page. I finished this whole book in that one day, and I freaking loved it. Some of the things I love about it was, again, his buildup of fear, because this guy, so it's Billy Halleck. I think that's how you say his name. Billy Halleck is the main protagonist in the book. He's a very wealthy, doing well attorney, lawyer, and one night his wife gets a little frisky while they're driving home and starts to perform a sexual act with him, and he doesn't pay attention, and he hits and kills this old lady. She's actually a Roma, a gypsy, and her father comes up to Billy and touches his cheek and whispers the word thinner. The cool thing about it is her father's name was Tadeusz Lemke. So, Tadeusz. He must like the name Tad. There must be something between us and me and Stephen King. My name's Tad. Tadeusz is in thinner. Of course, everyone knows Tad, the little boy in Cujo, who does not live. Spoiler there, sorry, if you haven't read Cujo. But, I don't know, he's got something about Tad, too. It's something about Haven. I have a son named Haven. Not actually after Stephen King books or anything like that, but I don't know, we got something going on there, of course. And then I lived in Maine and married a woman who went to school with his children. I don't know what's going on here with me and Stephen King, but there's something. Anyways, keep going, Tad. So he touches his cheek, whispers thinner, and of course he starts losing weight, and he's had this gypsy curse put on him. He needs to figure out how to get rid of the curse before he dwindles away to nothing. It's scary, it's fun, it's fast-paced, it's an easy read. The movie I thought was actually pretty good. So Thinner is my number 4. All right, next, number 3. Number 3, Misery. If you don't know Misery and you're a constant reader or even just a reader, these next 3 books on my list should not be any surprise to anybody. Misery is great. This book has 310 pages and a 4.19 Goodreads. Published in June of 1987. Another thinner book. So again, doesn't suffer from any of these slow parts. It's just fast paced. Of course, it's about a writer. You know, he oftentimes the protagonists in his stories are writers. This guy's name's Paul Sheldon, and he has a car accident, and he gets brought in by this lady, Annie Wilkes. Now, Paul Sheldon is a writer that writes a series of novels about this woman named Misery Chastain. He had written his last book in this series. He wants to get away from it. He wants to start writing other things. Well, Annie happens to be his #1 fan, and this cockadoodie woman does not want him to stop writing her Misery Chastain novels. If you watch the movie was great. Kathy Bates was freaking amazing in it. James Caan is in it. He does a good job. Not one of my favorite actors, really, but Kathy Bates, holy shit, she is scary. You know, the scene where she hobbles him is amazing. If you haven't read Misery, you have to read Misery. It's awesome. Even you have to watch the movie. It's awesome. Misery, number 3. All right, number 2, my top 2 of all time. Of course, Pet Sematary. Again, if you have not read Pet Sematary, stop what you're doing right now. Run out, find Pet Sematary, go online, order it, get it. You got to read it. If you're maybe younger and never watched the original movie, you've only watched the most recent movie, I'm sorry, it sucks. It doesn't even represent Pet Sematary at all to me. I don't know what they were doing there. Maybe trying to appeal towards a new audience. I don't know. But it's horrible. Don't watch that one. Watch the older one. It's great. This book is freaking scary as hell. 374 pages. On the Goodreads, it's 4.03. Should be higher. And published in November of 1983. So everyone knows what it's about. It's about this family that moves in a new house. They have a cat. The cat gets killed. They have a young child. They decide, let's take this cat. There's this place in town called the Pet Sematary where people, take their children to bury their pets and teach them about loss and things like that. Well, the thing is, the front of it is a pet cemetery. But as you go deeper and deeper into the cemetery, you start seeing it's getting older and kind of spooky and scary. And what is this? So the back of it is actually, well, what they assume is a Native American ancient burial grounds. And there are some crazy supernatural things that happen if you bury something in this old burial ground. So the family is so distraught that this cat, Church, I need to get a cat name in Church. I've had a lot of cats. I never named them Church. I wonder why that is. Anyways, so the cat gets killed. They take the cat to the pet cemetery. They bury it, but then the father goes back and takes the pet and reburies it back in the Native American burial ground. What happens? The freaking cat comes back to life. Is it alive? Is it a zombie? What is it? Is it evil? It comes back and it's not the same. Smells bad. It's scary. But anyways, it goes on from there. And of course, their young child, Gage, runs out into the road, gets hit by a semi, gets killed, and they're so distraught. So he brings Gage to the pet cemetery and buries him in the back. And then Gage comes back. It's horrific. It's scary. There's some scenes in here that will make your toes curl. Even watching the movie, the same thing. If you have a small child, you know the fears living by a road. I've talked about my older brother. He was hit by a car when he was 2 years old. Super scary book. Again, another thin one. The pacing is great. Fast. Beautiful. You got to read this if you have not read this book. And number 1, you all know what it is. So I'm not even going to talk about it very much. But it's my favorite book of all time. It's it. Again, this volume has 1,138 pages. On Goodreads, it's 4.25. It is the highest rated Goodreads of my top 10. And for good reason. It was published, of course, in 1986. I read this book when I was stationed in Turkey as well. By that time, my wife had come over to Turkey. We had a house. I read this, and what can I say about it? Everyone knows it. And if you don't know, if you're living under a rock and you don't know it, I'm sorry. But if you're a constant reader, or if you're a reader at all, you know about this book. You may not have read it, but you know about it. The original made-for-TV series movie, I freaking loved. I thought it was great. The new movies that came out, I think, are great as well. But I'm not... The main thing I'm going to say about this is the character development. So the children growing. It goes back and forth from when they're adults and this evil that keeps coming back and killing kids on a 26-year, like every 25 or 26 years. I can't remember. Something comes back and starts killing the kids. And again, it's in Derry. It's a Derry novel. But the main thing for me was when I got down to about 10 pages left, I read this book probably slower than anybody has ever read a book, like each word very slowly, because I didn't want it to end. I didn't want to close the back cover of this book. I didn't want to leave my friends. These people, I felt like I grew up with them. They were like my best friends. What an awesome novel. I think a lot of people agree. Please, if you have not read this book, please read it. It is amazing. All right, everybody. That's it. That's my top 10. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, what about this book? What about that book? Probably I haven't read it yet. So in my other video, I talked about my bookshelf of shame, my Stephen King bookshelf of shame, where I just haven't read everything yet. And I'm going to rectify that. I'm going through it. You saw this whole month has been pretty much Stephen King. So I'm going to try to fix that. All right, everybody. Thank you for sitting through probably another too long video. I appreciate it. Please subscribe, like, and leave me comments below. I would really appreciate it. All right. Peace out.